What's up guys, BriarRabbit here. I wanted to talk a little bit about the gameplay before we get started. If you're hoping to see some rushing gameplay, you're not going to see it here on this channel today. What you are going to see here is me using a dual band LMG with a silencer on it and skulking around and moving slowly, but getting a pretty decent gameplay out of it. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's talk about the Steam controller. So you guys saw this on the thumbnail for the video, and here's a picture of it up on the screen right now. The first thing you notice with this thing are there's no thumbsticks, right? That is the number one thing that just flares out at you, and that's what Steam has, or Valve as a company, has spent the most time talking about this controller. These are touch pads, right? They're circular touch pads. They have haptic feedback. They spent a little bit of time talking about this haptic feedback. But the thumb pads are very different than thumbsticks. So right off the bat, I looked at this thing and I said, oh, that's terrible. Like every experience I've ever had trying to use a touch surface for especially first-person gaming has been awful. Using a mouse on a computer, even the best, or I'm sorry, a touchpad on a computer, even the best touchpad I've ever used on a MacBook Pro, it just is not, it's just not sensitive enough, it's not responsive enough. Plus you don't really have a good idea of where your finger is in relation to where the center of it is, that kind of thing. It just doesn't work as good as a mouse or as thumbsticks. Also, I've used, obviously, an iPad and an iPhone for games, and I've tried to play first-person shooters on them, and again, it just doesn't work that good. They're not sensitive enough, you don't feel like you have real feedback like you do with a thumbstick, and you don't feel like you're as quick as you are with a mouse. So really, there's no good point to it, right? But if you look a little deeper into these thumb pads, there's actually some interesting features. First of all, they're circular, so obviously that's different than any other thumb pad you've used before. But if you'll notice, there's actually two concentric rings inside the touchpad, one right in the center, which should make it very easy for you to center your thumb into the center of the touchpad, and one on the outside. So up on the screen right now, I'm going to put up a map of how they expect the controller to work with Portal. And as you can see, the farther you move your thumb, the faster your character will move. So if you move all the way to the outside edge, it's like hitting the shift button and running, right? Whereas if you're in kind of the, not the middle, but the inside middle, that's just walking. And if you go right into the middle, then you're just stopped. So I found that to be pretty interesting. And what I'm wondering is if this will kind of change the paradigm for controllers. If this thing is really good, and if it works as well as a mouse, but you know, it has the convenience of a gamepad, that could really change things up. So imagine if that right stick, or I'm sorry, right pad is sensitive enough that if you were, let's say you're running around in Call of Duty with a shotgun, and you wanted to do a 180 real quick because you heard a guy sneaking up behind you, so you just swipe over really quick with your thumb. If that thing was motion sensitive, so it could detect how fast your thumb moved across it, and then make your character move accordingly fast, that could really change things up, because that is something that the mouse has that gamepads, game sticks have never been able to duplicate. There's just not the amount of control in a game stick that there is with a mouse. So I find that to be an interesting prospect. They also talked about the haptic feedback. You know, it'll vibrate. They say it's a little more than vibrating, but it's hard for them to explain it. I'm sure that's something that you really need to get your hands on the thing to really understand what it feels like. You'll also see that there's a little screen right in the middle, the square screen between the two thumb pads. And that is also a clickable touch screen. So you can push it in like a button. Oh, you can do that with the thumb pads too. You can push them in like buttons, as well as moving your thumbs around them. And then that screen can be programmed to have different buttons on it. It can act as one big button. It can act as a third display or a second display for your game. So it's pretty flexible in that way. And then there's the shoulder buttons up top too, triggers and shoulder buttons. So other than those thumb pads and that screen in the middle, it looks like a standard controller. But those thumb pads are a pretty big difference. I'm really excited to try this thing out, to be honest with you. I'm wondering if this thing will be available aside from the Steam box. To me, it's a risky proposition from Valve. I don't know that I'm gonna love this thing, but I don't know that I'm gonna hate it either. It could change everything, or it could just like completely cause the Steam box to fall on its face just because the controller is so bad. We don't know at this point. I'm sure they're doing a ton of research. They would not have released images of this thing if they were not fairly confident that this thing was going to work. But man, like I said before, I have never ever used a touch interface that was good for gaming. I've never used one, so I don't know that Steam can pull it off where others have failed. I do think that those ridges will help, just so you can locate your thumb on the thumb pad. It'll take that lack of feedback that we feel on the iPhone or iPad or your Android device away, hopefully. Also, with the rumbling features under the thumbsticks, or thumb pads, sorry, that could help too, because maybe it vibrates a little more as you get to the edge, and a little bit less when you get to the middle. Who knows? There's a ton of different ways they could use that. It's really up in the air though. You know, nobody's had their hands on this thing yet. Hopefully the beta testers will be able to talk about it a little bit, but then again, maybe not. You know, I'm sure they'll be under all sorts of NDAs. It is a really interesting design though. It really is. I like the look of it. It looks comfortable. I just don't know how a thumb pad is going to work for, you know, games. I've never had a good experience with it, so it's hard for Valve to convince me. But it's definitely a new and novel idea, and it's definitely going to get a lot of attention. Thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, hit that like button, and if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.